So while I was doing that last video of tangents and rants, yeah, sorry about that. Sometimes things get away from me. I was thinking about this guy. I kept on looking over, and he was my first, well, not my first iteration. You saw the two other iterations that I did before this guy, before I actually had a finished product that was remotely worthy enough to go into the layout that fulfilled all the obligations that it needed, which is to cover the door and work and blah, blah, blah. And it did that quite well, but it's kind of like meh, the aesthetic of it. I mean, it's cute and small, does exactly what it has to do, but overall, it was just kind of like, I can do better, maybe. So while I was going on that rant, I was thinking, ruminating in my head. I've never made it. I think, I'm not exactly sure of the criteria for the Vic Vipers, but I think this is my first Vic Viper. And the only thing that I actually vaguely remember about Vic Vipers is that the exterior wings cannot be attached at the front. And I think the exterior wings have to be proud of the front. I think there might be more criteria. This might not even qualify as a Vic Viper. but I have never built like this before. And I wanted to give it a shot. I was thinking about these wings since I built the other thing, and I think I was at work, and then I was on that little rant, and I thought I want to really, really use those wings. And so I came up with this, and if you zoom in like really closely, and so basically it is the same idea as this guy, but I think it looks a little more refined, as it were. It looks a little more like it came off the assembly line. My one deficiency with this guy was the lack of substantial engines, and I put these things on it to make it look like it had at least something. And so the last thing I just did right before this video was trying to come up with a solution for the engines for this thing, because I was originally going to do something akin to the X1, which is where you get the L brackets and you build all those things in between it, but I was going to put them in the bottom of the wing instead of the top of the wing, and not necessarily make it look exactly like that, because I wasn't going to use the 4x2 cone, but I was going to use something that was remarkably similar to that. The engines on the X1, as well as the engines that came on the little shuttle in the Beta 1, which is virtually identical, except different coloring and different positioning, but it's basically the same idea. And I used that engine extensively back in the day on most of my mocks. And then I thought, well, that's parts intensive and it's long and whatever. I don't want to do that. What's the cheapest and easiest and laziest way of making an engine on the bottom of a wing? And immediately I went to the Gamma 5, because that's the benchmark. The Gamma 5 is fantastic. And with the Gamma 5 is also the Starfleet Voyager, which uses the same idea of a hanging thruster on the bottom of a wing plate. And so I came up with that. Really, really cheap and easy. Kind of Gamma 5-ish, kind of Starfleet Voyager-ish. Without putting the big, huge 4x4 radar dish in the front. And with putting these guys, the thrusters on the back, that the Gamma 5 didn't do. So it's a kind of a combination, an homage, as it were, to the Gamma 5 and the Starfleet Voyager. Do I want to bring it down? I'll bring it down just to do a comparison. I don't think I have a Gamma 5 up here on my shelf, which is kind of disappointing, actually, because it is one of my favorites. But this idea right here, the Starfleet Voyager, but of course it has all this in the front, and I didn't want to put all that accoutrements, as they say, on the front of my little ship. I didn't want it to be too busy. I didn't want a lot of greebles on it. I didn't want a lot of details, I wanted something that looks like a Vic Viper, that, from my understanding, what a Vic Viper is, but also better than this guy. So I use the same idea with the slopes on the back. So you see all the slopes, I wanted the same idea. Because I like using slopes as greebles, I guess you want to say. Most of my spaceships back in the day, because that's all we had was slopes and plates, was built out of slopes. And, I even talked about the Cosmic Fleet Voyager. Most of that entire look to it is done by slope bricks. I mean, if you look at it, It's done by slope bricks. That's all it is. And it does have the big, huge 4x4x6 angle corner pieces, but the overall aesthetic of the Cosmic Sleeve Voyager is done by slopes. And basic slopes, so like a 1x2 slope bricks and inverted slope bricks, and 2x3 slope bricks, and blah blah blah. There are some fancier, and the Cosmic Fleet Voyager is the only one that comes with the 2x2 double convex inverted slope brick, I think in blue. It's very rare, as I found out because somebody was asking me for them and I didn't have any spares. The only ones I would have only came in the Cosmic Fleet Voyager. But the 2x2 but inverted double convex slope brick, it's very rare. But it is a slope brick. So so I do like using slope bricks a lot. Like even my LL Destiny, that was 6.5 feet long, along the entire length of that thing to go from small diameter to big diameters, was done with slope bricks. The whole thing was done with slope bricks. And I thought it looked fine. I've always been a big fan of just using the basic slope brick. Now the back end, a little better than this guy. This guy's a bit of a mess. You know, nice and clean lines, and the doorway looks a little better. And the hatch, I mean, the cockpit's a little bigger because I made it I got 2 studs in the back, and this one only had 1 stud in the back. So I rearranged things inside to make it bigger, so it's not as claustrophobic in universe for the guy the pilot to fly around. And I also reused the 2x4 with logo on it that we got from the Benny spaceship, which I really did appreciate. And did it come in the Galaxy Explorer? No, it didn't, because that was the 2x4 tile. So this is from Benny spaceship. I had a few copies left over. I got some in used lots. So I think it looks fine. No landing gear, just sits on the bottom like that, just like this guy. Do I want to put some landing gear on it? You know, I've always had that. There should be good landing gear on it. So here's me breaking my own. The bottom has to be at least semi-interesting. This bottom is meh. But then again, who cares? It fits under here. I think it's a little more obvious that's a spaceship than this guy hanging on the edge of there with the wings on it and stuff. I was going to make the wings movable. I really was. That was going to be one of my criterium in this thing, one of my criteria in this thing. But after trying to build so the wings could like move like the Invader, the latest release from, and even the original Blacktron Invader, I gave up on it. I said the stationary wings is fine. I also didn't put them on an angle, which is I think another Vic Viper thing people like to do, is to put the wings at an angle, like a negative angle going down. These things are straight across, which is fine. Which is absolutely fine for this guy. I think I like this one better than this one. I really do. I'm gonna stay with this. And yeah, I'm good with that. Now, am I gonna build 2? I don't know if I'm just gonna remove another base plate or a landing pad and put this guy somewhere else on there. So I can have something to talk about with the masses when they show up at Bricks in the Six and I say, hey, this was my first one and that's my second one. But I did pull out more parts and pieces to build more should I choose. I was originally, so I wasn't going to go with all these slope bricks going all the way out here. I was going to do a 924/928 kind of thing with these guys in the back. It just wasn't lining up, and the gray and with the blue, I couldn't get it to morph from gray to blue nicely, so I said screw it. So these things, I was going to do that whole, and even Starfleet Voyager, by the way, again with the Starfleet Voyager, which I just put back up here, with the wings here, I mean the tails here and tails up there. I was going to do that, add that kind of homage to the sets of yore. So I wasn't going to have these slope bricks go all the way out. They're going to stop flat here and then have this guy right there kind of thing, and then the wing coming out. No, it didn't look, it looked too forced kind of thing. I mean, it was going to be flat. See, there's a problem with the Starfleet Voyager. It's going to be flat back here, this top piece, and then hook into here somehow. I said, nah. screw it. So I did try. I really did. But I think, Batwing. That's one of my favorite scenes in the first Batman movie. Honestly, goodness, the first bit. Not like going off on tangents, but a lot of people are. I lived through it. The things that I lived through, I remember like this stuff that people are up in arms that Michael Keaton is not going to be a good Batman. Are you kidding? In the echelons of Batman, I'm not saying he's the top one, but I really I saw it in the theater, obviously, and I really liked it. I like Tim Burton's take on it because it is Batman. But again, Christopher Nolan's Batman's trilogy was fantastic. The second one was a little whatever, but the third one, Bane, cat's meow. I'll watch that anytime it's on TV. But one scene, like he pulled out all the stops to make that movie just as cute and comic bookish. Here's tangents. Superman 78 is my favorite superhero movie, period. I mean, it's just nostalgic, and I was 11, blah, blah, blah. And Christopher Reeve just embodied Superman and Clark Kent. And you can tell that when he was playing Clark Kent, he was a completely different persona than when he's playing Superman. Whereas, what's his name from Man of Steel? Tyler? Can't remember now. Even when he was Clark Kent, he looked like Superman. And Christopher Reeve is 6'4". He's like, I don't know how he didn't look like Superman when he played Clark Kent, but he did not look like Superman when he played Clark Kent. And so this has been my problem with a lot of the other actors, and I love them all. Like Brandon Routh, I liked Superman Returns. I really did. I thought it was, I back in the day, I liked Kevin Spacey. And then he was missed, and then he's back to hit again. But Superman 2 would have been a great movie had they put the effort into the CGI. I thought it was a little campy, a little more campy than the first one. Superman 3 was nothing to write home about. Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, was not even worth the film. Which is sad because Christopher Reeve is my favorite. But Superman, the Man of Steel was great. Superman Returns I liked. Justice League I really, really liked. I'm sorry I did. Both versions of it. Josh knows how to make a great movie, but the original Zack Snyder cut, and people have their problems with that. They keep on comparing it to MCU, but Batman 1980 whatever with Michael Keaton and Jack Nicholson and I had a crush on her growing up. I'm forgetting her name. Alec Baldwin's wife, Basinger, Kim. I liked it. It's fun. It's a campy romp for Batman. I like Tim Burton movies. They're not my favorite kind of movies because I'm not into that esoteric kind of macabre kind of thing. Like I never saw A Nightmare Before Christmas, which is shocking to most of my friends because they love that movie. But I liked Batman. And the one scene that I'll always live rent free in my head when he flew the Batwing in front of the moon and it just went down. It's like for 5 seconds, like he just threw it in there, just because the fan base would just go crazy over it because it's fun. It was just a fun movie. All the stupid little stuff in it was just fun. And so this is what this is. This is again to make the tangent talk about this thing. This was fun. I'm going to say the evolution of, and I got the other ones back here still, that just whatever. I haven't taken them apart yet to throw them in the collection. This has been a fun idea of mine to add to the layout just because it's fun. And I think if you're not having fun doing this hobby, then why are you doing it? It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be, hey, I get it. And here's the thing. So my woodworking, I like woodworking. I've done a bit of welding in my life, and I get that's fun too. And I watched a lot of YouTube videos and TikToks where people weld this beautiful contraption just to put in the garden, whatever. And crazy things with gearing and blah, blah, blah. You look at the beginning of Twister when that lady was building all those little wind chime and spinny things for the wind. I've seen people I've met people like that in real life that have this little hobby of puttering around the house and grabbing various things and putting them together in some cute little kitschy way that people can put in their garden or hang from their deck or hang from their veranda. I love that kind of stuff. The best part about Lego is that if you don't like it, it's 2 seconds to take apart and try again. With all the other things, you have to rip it apart and lose pieces and whatever, things break and whatever. So Lego is a very, very fun way of, I don't like this, let's try again. And I didn't lose any parts in the process. I didn't have to throw anything out. I didn't have to take a crowbar to take things apart or take a grinder to grind welds apart. I find my entire life, and I've done lots of work in various artists, like paintings and buildings and just building things out of scrap wood and whatever. And it's fun, but that was wrong, and you have to take a Sawzall to it to take it apart. This piece of cake. Even train layouts. And again, I remember being really heavy. My brother and I were heavy in the HO train layouts when we were teenagers, and we tried to build mountains and stuff like that with paper mache because we could. And don't get me wrong, it's a ton of fun to do so. And the more you do it, the more experience you get, and the better you're going to get at it, and blah, blah, blah. Because I used to go see a ton of train shows growing up. And I'm always amazed at the gorgeous layouts and almost realistic layouts that these people made over the years that I've seen. It's awesome. That's why I like doing shows, to see what other people do. One of my favorite shows was the hobby show, because there was the people who did quilting. That takes a lot of effort, and I said the train layouts and the needle points and the blah blah blah, the macrames. All of that requires so much effort to get to the point where you're at a show. Even going through the arts and crafts at the Peach Festival, we got that whole area where people are selling their wares, and a lot of it's now 3D printed, which is good in its own fashion. But a lot of it is still old school macrame or old school knitting or needle points and whatever, and they put it up and they work all year and they go to the Peach Festival and make a few bucks. I'm always inspired by other people's enthusiasm of their hobbies. I mentioned this numerous times. I'm always happy when I see other people happy with the hobbies that they do. My thing is, I can't do that. I mean, my mom always said, if you put your mind to it, I could do her pastel work. Well, maybe, but I'm not interested. Or I could do all this stuff. And I do woodworking, but you make a mistake, that goes in the fire bin. Right? This thing, I didn't like this. I'll just take it apart and build it again with the same pieces. That's one of the various reasons why I've always loved this specific hobby over my entire life, is that, I want to rebuild that better or neater or bigger or smaller or whatever. And this goes back to the robot competitions, where I got to combine my love of building Lego and gearing and all that stuff with my love of programming, because I got to do it on both sides, like meticulously going through every line of code and making sure it's perfect, and meticulously going through the robot, making sure the gears and the chains and the ratios and the motors and blah 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 and the wiring is all clean and neat and whatever, and then boom, I got a robot that I'm going to bring to a competition. And the hours I put in on those things at those competitions was extraordinary, and I didn't think I spent a minute on it, but because I was having so much fun, it didn't matter how much time was going by. I was having fun doing it, and that's what this is all supposed to be for you and me and everybody else, is that if you find something you love doing, it doesn't matter how much time you put into it. If people start bugging you about how much time you're putting into something that you love to do, they can go somewhere else. Again, walk in this direction. You go in the direction you want to go in, as long as you're not harming anybody else, as long as you're not losing your sight of your family, whatever. But if your hobby requires an extensive amount of time, don't just completely sacrifice the rest of your life for it. But when you're doing it and everything else is tickety-boo, then enjoy the moment. I mentioned this in the other one. Enjoy the moment. I had fun today after that video we just made, 50-minute rant. But I was thinking about this in the entire rant, so I just finished that video, picked up some parts, picked up some pieces, and I put this together. And here I am an hour later from the video I just uploaded. You guys will see it the next day, but here I am with this thing. And I like it. I mean, I liked this too when I built it, but now I compared it to, I like this one better. not to feel that this is my lesser child or anything like that. But that's what happens in this hobby. And and people, I have talked about this before, but people a lot of fans will not bring the same thing to multiple shows. They would come up with something new for the next show or something new for the next show. And I love them for it, by the way. I have brought the space layout to shows since 2007. Now, it looks different than it did in 2007, but I've been bringing space layouts to shows because it's easy for me and that's my passion. But the specific layout that I have right now, the static layout, I built those boxes, I think, right before COVID. And so that's the layout. Now, I've modified some things on the layout, but when you saw a layout in 2020 or 2019, at the Kids Fest, and you went to the show in 3 weeks over in Toronto, you're going to say it's exactly the same layout. Now, I can point out the differences in the layout between then and now, but the layout itself, from a distance, looks identical. Now, over the past 5 years, I've done things. You've seen me talk about it and show you the differences, including this thing behind me that's going to show up soon. But some people will take whatever they do at a show, they go and take the whole thing apart and build something brand new for the next show. Again, I support those people. I think it's fantastic. I think I adore them for doing it. I think they should do it, and they should do what they want. That's their love, that's their passion, and I'm here for it. For me, I keep on trying to perfect what I have until I'm done with it, and I'm not done with it yet. And when I am done with it, it'll be done. I've done that before, right? I've had other stuff at shows before that, I made the LL Destiny. You can go way back in my YouTube stream for that. A 6.5 foot long spaceship. That's my first entry into this September thing. And I love doing it. But when I was done, I said, oh, this was fun, but I don't need this here anymore. So I took the whole thing apart. I was done. Again, the moment the door closed, I'm done with this. Let's go into something else. Here's me breaking this thing in. And I don't know what's going to happen on the day that I'm done with the layout. I don't see it happening anytime soon because there are so many ideas in this head about what I want to do with the layout now that it's established, and I can modify it and add stuff to it and take things away from it, whatever. There are so many things I want to do, and also the layout itself is, I don't want to say this in a way that's misunderstood, it's beyond me now. The layout is a known entity, not to the world, but Jamie says, can I have that in my store? Absolutely. So it's there now. So it's not mine, quote unquote, I own it, but it's not mine. It's out there in the world displaying itself for other people to see. So I don't have to worry about it now. I don't have to have it here. It can go there and stay there as long as it can stay there. I am only bringing it back here because I have a show in Toronto in a couple weeks and I have to do a lot of work on it, or else it would just stay in Jamie's store. I don't mind leaving it until he's sick of it. Then I'll take it down and whatever. So I do not mind the idea that that thing can sit in a box or 8 boxes in the garage until somebody wants to display it at a show. And then I'll take it to the show and I'll set it up and leave it on display. And that makes my life easier because now I have something to contribute. Again, I've always felt like, my friend Kelvin and I were just talking about this last night at Lego dinner. Since I grew up in my family's house, my mom and dad's house, who are very, very socially and civically oriented and volunteered for literally everything they could volunteer for. It was always, you go to do stuff for the community. And that's what I'm used to. And you put the effort into making your fellow person's life better. And if it's just volunteering. So I was very, very young and started doing this stuff for quote unquote the public, whether or not it's a Easter egg hunt or a winter picnic at the park where we have the big huge ladle of soup and we're putting the fires and the skating competitions and the broom balls and blah, blah, blah. You show up, and as one of the junior leaders over the years, my mom, since she was always the senior leader, Dave fetch this, Dave do that, be there. But this is what I'm used to. This is what I grew up with. Now, to be said, when my mom was done, I was done with that specific niche of time. That moment closed. I've had some people from that era say, "Hey, Dave, like you used to be hardcore in the Boy Scouts," and I was hardcore in the Boy Scouts. I really loved Scouts Canada. I really loved the camping and the canoeing and the learning and the knot tying and blah blah blah, all that stuff that I got gleaned from that, and all my friends that I had in that, and all the fun times the bike trips and all that stuff. But I don't have that in me anymore to do. It's not who I am now. It was who I was then. And again, do I miss it? I hardly ever think about missing it. I remember the fantastic times and the fantastic people and the fantastic events, and I still have friends to this day. But I don't say, oh man, I really wish I was going camping this weekend with the Boy Scouts. I don't do that. I will say, because again, the moment's closed and I've moved on. I will say the one hobby I really do miss more than a lot of things is my scuba diving. I loved scuba diving. It was absolutely one of my most favorite things to do ever on the planet was to put a tank on my back and go harass fish. I found it to be the most relaxing and just comfortable, and the nicest experiences I've ever had was just throwing a tank on my back and hopping in the water. But I also know I was, in my teens, 20s, and 30s when I was doing that. I was stronger, more adept, less tired, less old, I guess we'll just say, and so I don't mind now physically not diving as much as I used to, but I do miss it because it was fantastic. It was the best of times. It was never the worst of times. It was just, and the people I dove with, again, the top drawer, my friend Andrew, who just passed away, was one of my favorite people to go diving with, and I miss him, and when I miss him, I miss some of the memories I have of why I'm missing is hanging out with him, going scuba diving. I mentioned when I talked about Andrew back after he passed away that whatever we were doing, he was there. He was always there. And whether it was the camping or the work around the house or putting the roof on, but scuba diving, he was also there for that, and he loved it with us. And so part of my reminiscing of diving is because I'm thinking about Andrew. But I did have a tank on my back this summer, a few months back. I wasn't as comfortable that time. I felt, again, for me, divings always have to be like calm and serene and blah, blah, blah. And it shouldn't be pushy and whatever. I just felt the whole thing was, I was uncomfortable. And even renting the tank and finding out, and that's a whole other story, and I don't want to disparage the company that rented me the tank, but it was literally disheartening after the dive when I found out about the tank. And then going, the whole thing, and again, so this is tangent on that tangent. To start this really, really quick, the Coles Notes version. Last weekend, my dad wanted to circumnavigate his garage. He's got a 24 by 24 garage shed shop, and he's a bricklayer, so he did all the block work, and then he had the floor poured, concrete floor in his shop, and that was decades ago. And what he's noticed in the past 5 or 6 years is that there's cracks developing all the way up the cinder blocks, not foundational setting cracks, because those just go along the mortar joints because the thing goes like that, like we have that in the garage, but cracks going straight up from the corners of the garage. And the problem is that the concrete pad in the garage is pushing on the walls because it was poured by not us. Let's say that nicely. And so let's rent a concrete cutting saw and cut around the perimeter so it relieves the stress on the walls. Perfect. So that was planned. And I spent the morning, a few minutes in the morning, measuring away from the wall because there's obstacles and whatever, and the concrete cutting saw, the whole rig, you couldn't get within 6 inches of the wall when you're cutting because the wheels and stuff like that. It wasn't a handheld one, it was in the little dolly. Fantastic thing, by the way. A handheld one would have been just a disaster because you couldn't follow a straight line with that thing for 24, 48, 96 feet. Um, so um, I took some crayon and I drew out from the wall, and about 8 inches away from the wall all the way around, and then we were cutting with the concrete saw and the 4-inch thick pad. So you know when the concrete cutting wheel has gone below that, and because you can just feel it. And so we did the entire perimeter, and I thought while we were cutting it, even while we're cutting it, I'm thinking in my head, because we would get to the edge and we go this way, and so we went that way, all 4 sides, and then but the blade didn't get to the wall because we just had to cross them right at the 90 degrees. So we cut through and then cut through this way, but we didn't go all the way to the wall. And the entire time we're cutting it, I think, oh, we should go back and then put the blade back in that groove and then cut to the wall that way and then cut to the wall this way. So all 4 cuts along each wall go straight to the wall as far as the concrete saw can, because it's a round blade, right? So it's not going to get to the wall. It's got a guard on it. So there's and since it's a 4-inch pad, so you know when you go through, and it's just going to go like that, right? So there's going to be this 4 inches of concrete that's not cut. But I thought afterwards I'll just go get the grinder, handheld grinder with the diamond blade, and cut as much as I could of that. So it's completely cut to the wall. So I was thinking about this in my head, and I never said it. Didn't say it once. It was just in my head. The longer we were cutting, the more I said we should go back, and I keep my mouth shut, which is sometimes good, most times good, sometimes bad. We did the entire perimeter, and then we cleaned off the concrete saw. I put it back in the van. We're going to take it back to the rental place the next day, or on Monday. But in my head, oh, we should have cut to the wall. And then I come home. It was a Saturday when we were doing it. And I come home, and my dad calls me. And he says, Dave, fantastic job today. Not a problem, Pops, got you covered. He goes, perhaps we should have cut to the wall. Son of a pup, in my head. Like for hours, I've been fretting about this thing. Just fretting about it. It's been stuck in my head, but I didn't say anything because everybody's there and everybody's doing their job, and I don't want to make oh, we should cut to the wall, because then I'm gonna look like this guy that's, oh, we have to be here cutting the wall. And so I kept my mouth shut. I honestly kept my mouth shut. And I was, even that nighttime when I was, oh, we should have cut to the wall. Well, the machine's still in my car. Oh, we should cut to the wall. And then my dad calls me up. We should have cut to the wall. He says to me, like, oh, for the love of everything, I'll be there first thing in the morning, Pops. So I go back the next, this is after we cleaned up everything and put everything back in the garage. So now, thankfully, because it was just the corners, we didn't have to pull everything out of the garage, but we had to move stuff. It would have been easier had I just opened my mouth while we were doing it to cut to the wall, right? So that was going somewhere. And it was like, there are so many things in my life that I look back on where I kept my mouth shut, because overall, I've been wrong. I mean, I asked one of my friends, overall, on a lot of things I've been wrong. But every once in a while, something hits my head inside my brain. And it's like, we should do it this way. We should absolutely do it this way because of X, Y, and Z. But I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to say anything. And a day later, or a week later, a month later, oh, we should have done it that way. And I'm going, for the love of it, why didn't I say anything? Why didn't I say anything? And so I'm out there scuba diving last summer. And it was like, I was uncomfortable. The water was cold. Well, below 20 feet was cold. It's the first time I had a tank in my back for a long time, right? It's not easing back into it. And the tank, when I picked it up, so I went to the dive shop in town. I picked up the tank, and it's an 80 cubic foot tank, which is supposed to be up to 3,000 pounds PSI, 3,000 PSI in the tank, which will normally last me 45 minutes. And the guy brings it out and he shows me on the gauge and it says 2,000. I'm going, why isn't it 3,000? Oh, we have a rule that it's only 2,000 in the tanks when we rent them. I'm going, my history with aluminum tanks, because I have my dad's steel tanks that he gave me when he gave up his diving, and those are 72 cubic foot, and they can only go up to 2450 psi because they're smaller, but they're heavier. And those would last me 45 minutes too. But anyway, 3,000. But I knew just from hanging out in the dive community as much as I did back in the day, there was a bunch of scuba tanks that were made across a few years, aluminum tanks that had an issue after a few years. It was found out that these Ranger tanks with these serial numbers were going to blow up. No, that didn't happen, but they were going to blow up because they were improperly made, some sort of manufacturing defect. And so all those tanks were supposed to be pulled, all of them. So that's already stuck in my head that I have an aluminum tank in my back, and it might be one of those tanks that has the serial number. But then the guy says 2,000 pounds, and I'm going, but I need 3,000 because I'm going to be diving 45 minutes. No, that's 2,000 pounds. Okay, whatever. So I grabbed the tank. So that's already set me off. I get up there and blah blah blah, and then we're doing something, and I'm getting a little fatigued, and I'm out there I'm not out there by myself. There's my friends in my boat. The buddy system is very important. So I'm tooling around out there, trying to find something in the water, that they put a buoy on it, and after wasting 9/10 of the tank, I finally find what we're looking for at the buoy in the water that's tied to a rope that goes down to 40 feet where the thing was lost. And I'm trying to get down to it. Now, also, to be said, I'm a little heavier than I've ever used to be, and I didn't have the extra weights on my weight belt. So it was always a struggle for me to stay, which is why I was sucking more air than I normally do. And that's why the tank was for 20 minutes instead of 45. And then come couple. And there's 20 feet, there's a thermocline, which is like from, nice warm tepid water to ice freezing cold, your fingers freeze off water. But I knew that was there, so I wore my full wetsuit. I had my hood, my gloves on, everything. I knew that thermocline was there. So, but I'm trying to get down to the end of the rope, and I'm struggling, kicking as hard as I can to get down, and I keep on blobbing back up, and it's like, oh, for the love of everything, and all of a sudden, there's no air in my tank anymore, which is fine. I've been here before. So I come back up, tank's empty, I can't get it. Fine. It wasn't that expensive, they didn't care. So I get back to the shore, to the dock, and I'm lifting my dive gear out, and I pick up my tank by the yoke, and I notice the yoke is loose. Like you could just unscrew it and hold it in your hand. And I'm going, what the actual F is going on here? Like it wasn't wrenched down. It was completely loose. Now, again, I know stuff, and I know enough stuff that gets me into trouble, that if you have a pressurized container and you have your stopper on it that's screwed in, even if that stopper's like when there's no pressure inside, it's the atmosphere pressure, you can unscrew that thing easy. But the second you add any kind of pressure, it's hard to screw that thing off. And if you add 2,000 pounds to it, that thing's not screwing off at all. But it doesn't matter. It was loose. The yoke was loose in the tank. I'm going, what are you kidding me? Like, are you honestly kidding me right now? And I went back to the dive shop to return the tank. And I wasn't livid. I'm not one of these Karen, give me money. No, I was like, dude, just giving you a heads up. The yoke is loose. As soon as I was done my dive and I picked up the tank, the yoke was loose. Oh, we're so sorry. That's never happened to us before. I do not believe that. I do not believe that after the 2,000 pounds and the yoke was loose. There's two things that screamed to me. You knew that this was possibly one of those bad tanks that could blow up, so you don't put as much air pressure in there. And you're just lazy enough not to tighten the yoke. There are two things there that bothered me. I'll never go back to that dive shop again. I'm not going to name names. I am not going to name names. I will never go back to that dive shop. Those two things. The 2,000 pounds, hey, not me. I went for a dive once with a buddy, and it was a multiple dive weekend up at Tobermory. And it was organized by organizers that said, we're going to do this, we're going to go to a boat, we're going to go there. Between the dives, you bring your tanks over to the dive shop, you put a tag on them, you grab the tanks when they fill up, and we go into the boat again, and we go to the next dive. So the whole thing's scheduled, the whole thing's whatever. It was conveyed to us, clearly conveyed to us, because there's 100 people descending on this dive shop at one time, that when you get your tanks back, and you still have to pay for it, $10 for fill, whatever, that you check your air, that you put your gauges on there and just turn on the tank to make sure it was actually full, because they think it's a dive shop and tanks are moving around. The guys are, grab these tanks, those are empty, those are full, blah, blah. Things can get transposed. Things can get mixed up. And so I just, by habit, when I grab my tank from any dive shop, my entire career, even going out to my good buddy Ed over in St. Catharines at Port Dalhousie, fantastic, Ed's dive shop. not there anymore. But even going to Bob's here in Hamilton. I love Bob, my family friend forever. Going to Ed's. I would, hey, Ed, he would have a gauge there. I put the gauge on. Thanks, 2450, my 72s, because they always bug me that I'm bringing my 72s in, my 72 steels instead of buying one of their 80s. No, I'm good with my 72s. That I would check it before I leave the building, because I don't want to drive, because sometimes we go to Kingston for a dive. Sometimes we're going out to Sarnia for a dive. We're going somewhere far away for a dive. I don't want to get all the way out there and realize my tank's got 100 pounds in it. You check your tank before you leave the house. You check your tank before you leave the shop, because they're busy, and I'm not faulting them at all for that. I've never once, it's only happened to me once or twice in my entire career, where I grabbed my tank after I paid for a fill and it's empty, but I'm at the dive shop. Hey, it's empty. Oh, sorry, got mixed up. And they fill it up right then and there. No muss, no fuss. See you, bye. I'll see you next week. It's what you do. So we're up in Tobermory. From the morning dives to the afternoon dives, we stop for lunch, and we leave the tanks at the dive shop. 2 tanks each, because 2 dives in the morning, 2 dives in the afternoon. So 2 tanks filled, whatever. And then in the afternoon, we go to the lighthouse. And if you ever have a destination in mind in Ontario, if you ever have a destination at all in mind in Ontario, Tobermory is like one of my most favorite places on the planet. Tobermory. And go to the lighthouse. I mean, it's not like you're moved and the angels are singing experience, but it's an experience. And and especially if it's not busy and you get to enjoy that by yourself and you're watching the sunset. There's other stories about tangents about scuba diving. But anyway, so we hop in at the lighthouse. The lighthouse is a fun dive because it's got a little shelf around that's about 2 feet in the water. 2 feet down, and then it drops off to 60 feet. Good times. And so we're out there. We got all my gears on. I check my gauges, blah, blah, blah. I trust my partner's doing the same. And we hop in the water, and we go to the edge, and we go down, and all of a sudden, I feel my second regulator, my spare regulator, being pulled off the magnet, and I look over, and he's breathing it. I'm going, and he holds up his gauge, and it says 0. It's like, really? Like, really? Honest to goodness, really? We were in the water for like 2 minutes. It's like, I will say I have not done it every time, but usually when I connect all my stuff together on ground and put my BC on my tank and make sure my regulators all like running, the cords running, the hoses are running, so they're all out of the way when I put my tank on in the water, that I look at the gauge. I look at the gauge before I even put my tank in the water. Oh, 2450, throw it in the water. and then I'm one of these guys, because I grew up, my first couple dives, there was no BCs. My dad, there was no BCs back when he was a kid. But my first couple dives when I got my certification, BCs, buoyancy compensators, were not a big thing yet. It's like the early 80s. BCs were not mandated yet. And so I'm used to not using my BC, my buoyancy compensator. It's just connected to the scuba tanks. When you press the button, the air from the scuba tank goes into your BC, and all of a sudden you have a life vest and pulls you up. Back when I got my certification, they had what they call the horseshoe vest, which was just a glorified, you see them in the movies of the airplanes, where you put this horseshoe vest on, you pull the cord, and all of a sudden, the carbon dioxide fills that little tube, it fills that your entire vest with carbon dioxide, and that pulls you up. But it's a one-time use because of the CO2 cartridge. You pop it, all of a sudden you're floating up. That's when I got my certification. That's what we were using for that. And so you would never use it as a buoyancy compensator. Then BC's caught on, BCE. And so you can either press a button, air from the tank. Again, fantastic special effects here. And it fills up your buoyancy compensator. You have more volume and air. You need to come up. I will not use my tank to fill up my BC while I'm standing on the ground, because they also have an inflator hose things, mouthpiece. So you put the thing in your mouthpiece, you press one, it's like blowing up a balloon, and all of a sudden your BC fills up with your air. Because if you're on the land, why am I wasting my scuba tank's air that I paid money for? That's for me breathing when I'm in the water. So even when I'm in the water, treading water, and I'm like on the surface, I will take my mouthpiece from my BC and blow air into my BC instead of wasting my tank air, because tank air is for scuba diving. Whereas other people, I say, they're sitting on the surface, I hear it coming from the tank, and they're blowing up their BC. And I'm going, they can do that. Absolutely, they have all the rights in the world to do that, but it's wasting my breathable air in that tank for scuba diving. And so when I mentioned that is, I have my 72s from my dad, 72 cubic feet of air, and most of my friends that I dived with over the years had 80s, 80 aluminums. So 80 cubic feet of air is a lot more than 72 cubic feet of air. You just look at the numbers. And yet, for the most part, my tank and their tanks lasted exactly the same amount of time, ish, give or take. Again, going back to my friend Andrew, he was just a constant stream of bubbles when we're scuba diving coming out of his regulator. Like he was, it was a constant stream. You're not supposed to hold your breath diving, by the way. So that's, if you go scuba diving, never ever hold your breath. But I'm just used to it. I'm calm and relaxed, and I love scuba diving, that I never suck back air, right? You just breathe normally, and you just, because when you're in the water, it's minimal effort for me to move around. It's like walking. It's like a nice, like if you're running all the time, then you're gonna, you're breathing heavier. But if you just, was harass a fish over here, go through some seaweed over there, what's that over there? Just kind of gradually get over there. Oh, that's kind of neat. And so you're not expanding a lot of energy, and you're just enjoying the water. Now, to be said, I'm not seeing like literally everything, like my friends who move around fast and they're kicking over there and they're kicking over there, like marathon swimmers. Oh, what's that over there? And all of a sudden, they're over there. Oh, what's that over there? They're over there. Where I just kind of like take my time. I grab a few rocks on the ground to pull myself along, because using your arms to move yourself along the bottom of the river is a lot less energy intensive than using your legs to kick you through the water. So just grab it, because again, you're something's falling, you pull yourself forward, and my dad taught me that. So I overall really relaxed scuba diving, but the last dive this summer, not relaxed at all, not even close to relaxed. And then all that stuff happened, and I'm going, oh my goodness. And I should have. This is where the tangent comes in. I should have verified. Listen to what's in my head. I should have said, cancel the reservation. I'm not paying for this. 2,000 pounds. That immediately set me off. And I think that's why I didn't have a good dive, because I was thinking about, why is this 2,000 instead of 3,000 the entire dive? Because it sat wrongly in my head. I was discombobulated in my head because of the 2,000 pounds. And then afterwards I realized why it only had 2,000 pounds in there. And I was like, oh my goodness. And then this has never happened to us before. I don't believe when people say that anymore. I've got too much experience to believe when people say, oh, that's never happened before. Especially when there's other things that are mitigating, things that add to the, the 2,000 pounds. I have to say that I will try to, especially when it's your life on the line. And this is the whole thing about scuba diving. It is your life on the line. You're the one that's in the water, right? And I'm going down to 40 feet in some water that I've never been in before. I have no idea what's down there. There's the pea soup, black as tea. And so I'm already off anyway. I haven't had a tank in my back for a couple of years, and I've done like everybody's in the boat. So it's like, I wasn't happy. I was not happy. I wasn't like outrageously, I can't do this. But I was really taking my time to verify that I'm going to be okay. Whatever I do here, I'm going to be okay. And so that's weighing on my mind. Whereas normally, if you go back in this YouTube stream or to my playlist for scuba diving, there's some good diving videos on there that I'm just down there having a great time, up in Tobermory and the Wetmore and the James King, in the caves, and out in Lake Ontario and whatever else, the Welland River, just having a blast and not even thinking about the tank, not even remotely considering the tank. The one thing about scuba diving that I've learned, even at a young age, is that you have to work at getting into problems that you can't get out of. You have to work at it. Now, never take anything for granted. Always have a dive plan, blah, blah, blah. But you have to really work at becoming really, really bad at, getting yourself into a bad situation. Because I run out of air, I come up. I ran out of air at 90 feet once, not to brag about this, but I ran out of air at 90 feet once. But the second you come up 20 feet, there's air in your tank again because the pressure's less. And so you just still follow the one small bubble all the way up and you get to the top. You know, you tell your dive partner, or if you have a dive partner, you have a spare regulator. There's only one time it ever happened to me because I was just too busy just enjoying the dive that I wasn't keeping track of my regulator, or my pressure gauge, pressure gauge for the tank. And all of a sudden I look, oh, here's the other thing about steel tanks versus aluminum tanks. My dad taught me this too. My steel tank started making a pinging noise when it got emptier, like below 1,000 pounds. You breathe it, and it's what you hear. Like when it's 2,000 pounds, it was just regular breathing. But the second you hear the tank pinging, I don't even have to use the J valve. I never had to use my J valve. But the pinging, I'm getting close to the end of the dive, so I better start thinking about leaving the dive. so partner, out of air, whatever, going up. Let's go up. And so we've done hundreds and hundreds of dives over my life, and mostly with my buddy John, but I have had other dive partners, and I learned to trust my instincts. Like I mentioned the Rockport story years ago where that guy says, oh, you want to do the wall? I go, no, I don't. I'm not remotely. What are you, chicken? Yeah, I'm never, ever, literally ever diving with you. The second you said that, you could not, if you had $1 million in your pocket right now to make me go diving with you, I'd say no. I would not do it. So I listened to the voice in my head. What are you, chicken? No, we're gonna go over here now. So and yet I didn't listen to my inside voice when the guy was 2,000 pounds in the tank. I didn't listen to it. I ignored it. I purposely ignored it because I wanted to go for a dive. And yet in my head, the entire dive, that's all I'm thinking about. And then after dive, I'm going, this is why I was thinking about it. And it's just the same as the concrete saw. The entire day, I'm thinking we should cut to the walls. We should cut to the walls. I don't want to. Everybody's good. We're having lunch. We're all doing our things, and everybody's fine. And nobody else is mentioning it. So why am I even thinking about it? And yet I thought about it until Dad called me. And so, like, you listen to the voice in your head, not listen to the voices in your head. That's a whole other story. But if you think something is right to do, just see what happens. Just mention it. I think maybe we should go to the wall. And none of them would have said no. None of them would have said no. They would all jumped on. And it was more effort afterwards than it would have been if we were right there, just 8 more inches to the wall. That's right. And it's like, why didn't I? Why didn't I not? Because I'm a guy who likes to think I have enough self-confidence in what I believe is right and wrong. I've talked about this a lot. I talked about my last rant. I got in a little bit of rant. I think it's right to go off in that rant. I have no problem telling people my opinion. I really don't. But it's like, I don't know why specifically I kept my mouth shut that entire afternoon, because I love the people that were there. They would have listened to me. Oh, Dave, not a problem at all. Let's go to the wall. I don't know why I didn't mention it. I honestly don't know why. I don't know. I do know why I didn't mention the tank, because I wanted to go for a dive, and my buddy wanted to get that thing off the bottom of the lake, and blah, blah, blah. And so there were some external pressures there, mostly imposed by me, actually 100% imposed by me. But the voice in my head says, don't do this. And I didn't listen to it. So that's the negative side. The positive side for the concrete cutting is I got to go back and use the machine again. So I remember that place. So all that said, going back to all this stuff, do what you think is right for you. Nobody else told me not to do it. Like, again, when it comes to the concrete cutting, nobody says, oh, we shouldn't go to the wall. I don't know why I didn't say it. So going back to this thing is that if you don't like something, fix it. You're not wasting anything. In this specific hobby, you're not wasting anything. You're going to use the same pieces again for something else. So if you think that you built something that you don't like, work on it until you do like it. I mentioned to wrap this whole thing up after 53 minutes, that tower right there that you can't see on the screen, probably can't, did not look like that 10 years ago. And I said, I didn't know, and I keep on talking about this, right? I'm probably boring you. I did not know what the tower was going to look like in my head until it looked like that. And I said, and I took a step back when I put the cake topper on. And until that moment, that tower was not done for me, no matter what everybody else said. It wasn't done for me. Now, I'm going to put this in there. I'm going to see if I like it anymore. Like this is an addition to my completed tower. So we'll get there. Anyway, another 50-minute video. That's it. That's all. Love talking. I'll talk to you guys soon.